All right. So I've taken probably 2 weeks off doing any kind of podcast. And what I thought I would do today is just go through a conversation that I've actually had with several developers. And that is, this was actually, I don't want to put anyone out there that hasn't given me permission. So I'll just say that very successful developer. And he said, Shane, like I was just having a conversation and we're selling, some land, and the developer that was going to buy it said, hey, can you send me your pro forma? And let's call him Bob. Bob said, well, look, you and I both know that we can make this pro forma look any way we want. And when I heard that, it totally resonated with me, because at the end of the day, anybody that has done any type of acquisitions or put together any type of financial models know that all you need to do is tweak a couple of numbers, right? Interest rates, rental rates, cap rates, costs. And we're talking about like small changes, right? Like I'll give you an example. So right now, working on a $50 million project, a 1% interest rate can change cash on cash by, in this situation, around, just going by memory, it's like 7 or 8%. Okay. So why am I telling you this? The reason I'm telling you this is if you're a developer, so these are my notes. If you're a developer and you're considering like looking at buying a new site and you're questioning like, I need a pro forma. I think really what it is that you're looking for is, because to me, a pro forma is really a story, and it's a story of all the assumptions that are going into that project, right? And why is that important? It's important because you should be able to look at the numbers that are going into a pro forma and gauge whether or not those numbers are real or BS, right? I guess that's probably the best way to put it. And here's kind of my perspective on this, right? So I've been developing now for, I don't know, since about 2010, 2011, actually doing developments. And I know that it takes probably 18 to 24 months for me to really feel comfortable on like developing a new project once I have some level of experience, right? So if I go into a market, like I get sent pro formas and deals from people I just got one in Florida, another one in Denver, New York, Toronto, Vancouver, doesn't really matter. Name any city outside of Calgary, or even maybe for that matter, Edmonton. And I'm not really going to know whether or not the assumptions that are going in there, really the big ones are costs and rents. If I don't have a firm handle on those assumptions, then I really can't comment intelligently. What I can do and what I'm able to do for people is I know what questions to ask, right? And so I think that is like an important aspect of it, right? In terms of looking at the pro forma. And generally speaking, I can look at, even if it's a pro forma in, say, Toronto or Vancouver, I can look at it because I understand the debt in Canada, and I understand, okay, if this is for rent or if this is for sale, I have a pretty good idea of how they're going to secure, the majority of the money that goes into the project. But I'm still not going to know whether or not like the other side of the equation, which are rents or income, if you're selling, whether or not those are legitimate. So the next piece of the puzzle is, okay, once I know what the questions to ask, and next I need to know who am I going to talk to. And this is probably, frankly, the hardest to really figure out, right? Especially if you're on your own or if you're new. And I can tell you, like, I'm just kind of going back when I first started doing developments, and I would meet a lot of, like, I'm going to say nice people that wanted to share information. And there was a challenge with, I would say, probably about 80 to 90% of the people that I spoke to. Number one, I didn't fully understand their motivation, so I didn't know whether or not I could fully trust them. And number two, like the people that you really want to talk to are generally the hardest to get to, and they don't have time to just give away free information to, I don't want to use the word tire kick, but people that are not like in the bit of a tangent, just so you can get a sense as to kind of how this might apply for you. But once a month, I get together with a group of kind of sophisticated real estate developers here in Calgary, and we share information kind of openly, right? But it's a give and take, right? people are not going there. Like I go there and I think to myself, what valuable information can I hopefully share with this group? Because I know eventually I'm going to have questions of my own to hopefully help me in the future. Well, if you're just showing up and you're, let's say, taking information constantly, what ends up happening is you'll either burn through qualified people that can help you, or you'll end up just talking to people that have, I'll say, opinions, but they don't really have like on the ground experience. Because generally speaking, the insights that you learn through doing developments are hard fought and expensive oftentimes. And so it's not likely that you're going to get, the best people in the industry that are going to share that type of information openly and freely with someone that they might perceive as either a competitor or someone that is not going to be able to have like a quid pro quo. Now that might sound harsh, or it might sound like, I don't know what other words you could use, but where people are scarcity mindset. However, this is a very competitive environment that we operate in. It's not like there's an infinite amount of land and development sites, and so just understand that you're competing with other people, and so you just want to understand like who is it that you can really rely and trust to give you proper guidance and information. And what I would say is, regardless of whoever you're getting information from, you still have to take it with a bit of grain of salt, because that's their experience. And you don't know whether that experience was a site or a project that they had 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, the location, suburban infill, so many variables that you really need to understand as to whether or not that information that you're getting is accurate, but it's at least a good start. And so when you combine the right questions with the right people, that's when you can start to formulate and put together your own set of assumptions, right? And I can tell you that every time we do a project or a development, especially if it's in a narrow parameter, right? Like if we're doing townhouse projects for development for rent, then over time, every project we do, we get better and better. Our assumptions get tighter, right? And so what ends up happening is maybe the goalposts were like this when we started. If you're listening to this on the podcast, it probably doesn't make any sense, but my hands are wide apart. And then as you do your second development, they get more narrow. The third development, more narrow, right? Now I can do a back of the envelope on most projects in around Calgary in about 10 minutes. And I would say that, the only thing that would be the biggest variable will be obviously your density, like how many townhouses you can actually put on it. So barring that, and then any underground issues, civil, that might come up, I would say that we're within 90 to 95% accuracy rate on day one, right? So now that's come from several years and doing this, for we'll build 200 plus townhomes on the construction side of our business at Calamar this year alone. And so if you were to ask me that on office buildings, I don't know if people are developing office right now, but I would be starting where most new developers are starting, and that is at scratch, right? At square one. And so if you can find people that are actually doing what it is that you're looking for, that's probably, the shortest path. And then I would say look for ways that there's a win-win situation, right? You can either hire them, they're going to get business from you. Those would probably be the two biggest ways that I think that would be beneficial to both you and them, and why they would probably feel comfortable sharing some of that information. So I think that that's mainly what I wanted to share. Just in summary, a few of the things that I would probably just point out are, number one, if you're a developer, like the things that I'm always focused on are like, do I know my costs, right? And so oftentimes you're going to know your land because that's an inputted cost. And then you should have some fairly decent idea on your hard costs. That usually makes up like 60 to 65% of the budgets that we work on. And then your soft costs, right? You should have kind of a pro forma in terms of like, what are the soft costs that I need to be aware of? And then you can start to fill those in. And the last one is having an idea of what your debt is going to look like. What are the interest rates? Which means generally you're going to be talking to a mortgage broker. And when I have those three pieces of information, my costs, my revenue, and my interest rates or my debt, then what I'm really trying to get to is what is my cash on cash. For me as a developer, that's what I'm focused on. I will look at IRR. However, IRRs are easily manipulated, and they can be manipulated by what's your growth rate into the future. Number one. Number two is what cap rate are you using to sell this at, right? And that is really just a fictitious made up number. And I can tell you that you can manipulate that. Like a quarter point on, $3 million of NOI is huge, right? It can be like the difference between doing a deal and not doing a deal. So that's why I really focus on cash versus IRR, but that's just me. And once you have those, you have the right people. I feel like now you've started to assess, and you can put together your own pro forma. And literally, you don't need a very complicated pro forma. I mean, it's nice and financial underwriting. However, you can really do this on like a yellow pad. That's probably how the majority of people I've learned from still do it. And when I'm out pitching or raising capital or talking to people, I will literally break out a piece of paper and I'll just run through those, right? Here's my cost, here's my revenue, here's what my cash on cash is going to be after my debt. And here's the assumptions that I've made. So hopefully that's helpful. Like I said, generally, if you have questions as it relates to doing a development and you want to send it to me, please, Shane@shanemelanson.com. And I'll do my best to share those on future episodes. Bye for now.